Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of the Confidence Connection Show. I am here with the amazing Victoria Vanstone, who's here to talk to you all about life as sobriety, as a sober person. She's gone through a lot. She's chosen to live a life of sobriety, and I can't wait for her to share her story with you all about what that looks like and how to push through those social pressures when you choose not to drink. So she's a writer, podcast host, and alcohol-free living advocate. She lives in the Sunshine Coast with her 3 uncontrollable kids, and she doesn't drink, so that's amazing, and her very patient husband. She's been writing about her sobriety for 3 years and is now the host of the popular sobriety podcast, Sober Awkward. When she's not blogging or parenting, you can find her digging into a big slice of chocolate brownie at her local cafe or hiding from her children in the Aldi car park. You can read about her zigzag journey in her blog, drunkmummy.sobermummy.com. She also runs an online network for women questioning their relationship with alcohol. Just search the Sober Social for Sober Curious Women on Facebook. Her book on becoming a sober mum will be published next year, and I'm sure it'll be a great read. So welcome, Victoria. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your morning to be here. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a mum of 3. I've always been a huge binge drinker all my life. So I started drinking at a very, very young age. My parents are partiers. I was brought up in a household with frivolous, fun-loving people, which was a fantastic place to be. But from a very, very young age, I was influenced, I guess, by then. My little spongy child brain was soaking up their behaviour as well as the alcohol, I think. So yeah, I was always destined to be a drinker. It was part of my deluded destiny, I guess. I grew up stealing booze from the garage, wanting to join in this sort of cheerful pandemonium I'd grown up in. And I wanted to be like my parents. I had all older siblings that were all rebelling before me, so I was kind of soaking up their behaviours as well. So everything I wanted to do involved copying what my parents and what my family were doing. Yeah, so I started stealing alcohol out of the garage from a very young age, sort of being the instigator with my mates, come on, have a swig, and I just felt like drinking gave me a sort of superpower back then. I was the one that was in control. I had the drinks, I had the cigarettes, I was that teenager who was giving you the elbow saying, come on, let's get this party started. That was kind of the role I created for myself. And actually that didn't stop until I was 40. So yeah, since then, a lot's happened in that period. So I basically, something happened at school when I was quite young. I was 14 and I had some really great friends. And they turned their back on me. And for me, when I was 14, you know how great your best mates are at that age. And actually losing my best friends, which for an unknown reason I never found out, actually started to open up a little void inside me, I think, Bronte. So this hole got deeper and deeper as I got, and wider as I got older. Things happened throughout my life, and the only way I knew how to deal with any emotions was to pour alcohol over them. That's just who I was. And of course, that's going to lead to risky behaviour throughout my life. So as a teenager, I was drinking, which led to recreational drug use. Of course, I was a party girl. What else was there? So there's a lot of situations that happened in my life because I was always the drunkest person in the room. It was kind of my role, and it became my persona. It became what was expected of me as a human. So my friends knew me as that girl that you could rely on to be a good drinking buddy. And I didn't mind it at the time, but the recreational drug use led to me having severe anxiety in my early 20s, which, I saw another side of myself then. I broke, I guess, and I had to move home with my parents, and I had to learn how to live a life with this anxiety all day, every day, and it was a terrible, terrible time. But I remember during that period, my get better goal, was to start drinking again. I knew that if I could drink again, that meant I was back to normal. So that's how ingrained drinking was in my life, was that my drinking goal when I was severely ill was to get wasted. So I just couldn't see a way out of it. I've been in very, very deep with this. I identify as a socially acceptable alcoholic. My drinking is the sort of drinking that gets cheered on from the sidelines. It's the sort of drinking where, I'm part of a crowd. It's diluted by the people I surround myself and absorbed into the crowd. So nobody really noticed that my drinking was kind of, getting worse and worse throughout my life. There was a drink driving incident when I was 20, which I'm terribly not proud of, which I ended up having, to pay a fine and go to court and all those humiliating things. I mean, promiscuity is another side effect of heavy drinking in my 20s and 30s, before I met my husband, of course. He wouldn't let me hear me say that, would he? So yeah, there was lots of side effects from my drinking, and I travelled the world for 10 years, which is a perfect excuse to sleep with someone and then do a runner the next day, which I did a lot. But all of these decisions were made under the influence. I don't know if you can see, Bonty, but I'm a finger short as well. That's another side effect of drinking. I blew my finger off with a firework on the Millennium Night. I've got so many stories that I could tell you, which are all related to binge drinking. So we're not talking about me getting up in the morning and having a bottle of whiskey, or me passed out in a gutter or eating from a dumpster. We're talking about the sort of party girl drinking that everybody has done at some point in their life. Most people tend to slow it down as they get older, but for me, it just was so ingrained in me, and so who I identified with. I didn't know who I was without alcohol, and I was scared to find out, so I didn't. So I just carried on until I had children.
Wow, that is such a powerful story. Like, I can totally relate. Like, my parents were that sort of, I feel like the story you're all saying about yourself, I feel like it's like my parents' culture, that they also, are socially acceptable alcoholics, and they do sort of admit that, but they have no intention of slowing down at all. And the same, like, and I've had my moments of, drinking too much, but I think I was the opposite. Seeing my parents as I grew up, I don't want to end up like that. And so, as much as I still wanted to be have the fun and stuff as a teenager and in my early 20s, I was still very much aware that I do not want that to be my path. And I think as a child growing up, you either join in on what your parent, become your parents, or you go to the total opposite way. It's funny because you can see it in my parents, like, they like me better when I'm drinking because it makes them feel better about what they're doing. They almost feel like awkward if I'm sober, like, if I come over on a Saturday night but I choose not to drink, it makes them awkward because it makes them look at their decisions, which is
so they don't realise that that's like them looking in the mirror. It's like a reflection of their own behaviours. And as you say, for me, that's so good that you didn't say, right, I'm going to be like them, because for me all my life, the reason why I discovered I was such a huge drinker, because it's always been about acceptance for me, and being liked, and being people liking me, and I thought people liked me because I was a good drinker. And since I've become sober, obviously I've realised that's not the case, but that's taken me a very, very long time. And for you to have that insight as a child or as a teenager or even an adult to go, actually, I don't want to be that, I think it, hats off to you, because that's a difficult place to get to, because it is very confronting for people. So to actually say, no, I'm not going to drink around you even though you're drinking, is very, very hard, because everyone's trying to twist your elbow, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later. But that thing of acceptance, especially by your peers and your parents, it's very hard to say no to those people.
And I think the times where I have drunk too much, especially in the past, it's those moments where you do want to feel accepted. You're like, I don't know how to be in this situation, so I'm just going to drink, and the drink can take care of the situation. Like,
exactly.
Experience, so.
Yeah, and the night goes quicker, doesn't it? I mean, I do know how long nights are now that I'm sober, but I'm quite happy to leave before the chaos. But nights are longer when you're not drinking, but at least I get to remember everything. Like before, the night was actually quite short, because the time that I enjoyed the drink between then and the blackout, it was actually a very short-lived moment. So I realised I was living for these short-lived highs, which I don't do anymore, of course.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what made you want to go sober? Was there a defining moment or a turning point that you were like, all right, light bulb went off, I need to go sober?
So I met my husband when I was 34, and he was the first person who I felt like loved me for me rather than for the party girl. And that was like, right, we were engaged within 6 weeks. I was like, he's a keeper. So I got pregnant very quickly, and I had my first child, George, And 6 weeks after he was born, I had a glass of champagne in the hospital bed after a C-section, which probably wasn't the best idea. No wonder I was seeing rainbow dragons, and I think I was on a few opioids as well. I was completely off my head. Anyway, I had the baby, and nobody really talks about this place. I call it my sort of Pinot Gris purgatory. It's a place where I got stuck, and it's a place between the pub and an AA meeting, and it's where this transition from party girl to mother happens. And everyone goes, oh yeah, you're a party girl, you're brilliant, you're a drinker, you're fun. And then all of a sudden, you're stuck at home with a crying baby on your own, with no one around, totally isolated. And for me, that transition was very, very hard. I didn't know that it was going to be so lonely, motherhood. And I know I was a party girl. The responsibility of having this small life to look after for me was a lot. So of course the only thing I knew how to do to release that, this mother's milk as they call it, was to go out and escape. So every weekend, well, not every weekend, but the gaps between my drinking sort of accentuated my indulgence. I never drank at home, I never drank in front of the child, but I was gagging for a night out. Anytime one of the women from the mothers group was like, let's go out, I was kind of, right, I'm in. And I was planning packing all the stuff up, like squeezing out breast milk and all those other undignified things. And I learned how to parent and party. That was what I wanted to do. I thought, I'm not going to let this child change me, because at that point, I still wanted to be this party girl. And this went on for 4 years. I tried to combine these two very, very different lives. And it was hard, because actually anxiety came back. The same anxiety that I'd had from my 20s sort of infiltrated my hangovers. I started to feel absolute dread and fear and guilt and shame every Sunday when I woke up. I mean, my book is called 1,000 Wasted Sundays. It's based on this area here where I struggled, because I wanted to be this person that I knew, but yet I used to have to listen to my husband take the children out, take my son out for a day on his own, because I was too hungover to move my head. It was absolutely awful. And then I'll be lying in bed on a Sunday after a big night out with a baby crying in the room beyond my hangover. And for me, it was heartbreaking, but I did not know another way of being. So I would try moderation. I would make promises to just have one or two. But of course, it was the first one that did the damage. So once that one was down, my inhibitions were out of the window. And then I was dancing on a table, before 10 o'clock at night. I just could not control my drinking, and it was deteriorating. I was never drinking more, but the baby was the first consequence I'd ever had. I know it's terrible to call a baby a consequence, but my baby was my final wake-up call. There had been many, many wake-up calls throughout my life, which I'd chosen to ignore because I couldn't imagine a life without alcohol. But then there was this child, this thing that I loved more than anything else in the whole world, was saying to me, what are you doing? You're not here. And I was losing precious time with him. And I felt it, but it still went on for 4 years. I actually got pregnant again. I had a lovely window of sobriety, that 9 months, where I just became myself. And, I thought it was the pregnancy hormones that were making me all happy and content. But actually it was the fact that I had no alcohol in my body. So I loved that time, and I made promises myself to be this, this pregnant mummy, this rosy cheeked mum for the rest of my life. But 6 weeks after she was born, she wasn't feeding well, the usual side effects of becoming a new mum, sleepless nights and all of those things. I actually became very, very anxious again, because I was so tired. I mean, and tiredness, as you probably know, with your mental health, especially with everything that's going on, you've got a 4-year-old, a newborn baby, and it just got too much. And a mate of mine invited me out for a drink, and I got absolutely plastered when the baby was 6 weeks old. And the next day, I got up, and I had the worst hangover, one of the worst hangovers I've ever had. I mean, my hangovers were awful. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I've absolutely had enough. I can't moderate. I'm failing. I can't control my drinking. I have 2 children, and I'm not the mother I am supposed to be. And I put my dressing gown and I walked out into the lounge, and my husband was there with the 2 kids, and I said to him, I think I need professional help. And that was the moment where everything changed. It gives me goosebumps even talking about it now. I mean, I've told this story so many times, but it really was a defining moment where I just literally, my body was screaming out for help, and I cannot do this to me or to you or to anyone anymore.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. I'm so glad you had such a supportive husband during all that time, because he could have so easily have just walked down and be like, this is too hard. So that's so great that you had that support around you. And I think too that, like you said, you tell yourself you just have one drink, and I've been there where you do want to be sober, and people don't realize that having one drink is harder than having no drinks. Like, it's so much easier to just say no to everything. And you get those people egging on, like, just have one. Who cares if you're driving? Just have one. And it's like, as soon as you've had that taste for it, you just want more. So it's so much easier to just say no to everything.
Yeah, the science behind it is very simple. It's like 1 is too much and 2 is too many. It is that first one that does the damage, because then your brain has changed, and because it's sugar, your body is designed to want more. It's not actually your fault. It's your body. If you are like me, you're either like me or you're not. There's kind of two people who can stop at one and ones that can't. And that is your brain. It's designed for you to want more. So nowadays I don't feel so guilty about that. I go, gosh, my body was designed to do that. So, you can't blame yourself 100%. There are so many factors involved, environment, culture, science, all of these things. But in the end, I realized it was me reaching out for the bottle. It was me waving a tenner at the barman for a pint. It was always my hands moving towards my face. And in the end, I had to take responsibility for it. I had to go, this is me that's creating this problem, so therefore it's up to me to stop it.
Yeah, well, that's so powerful. And I think if people can't relate to that one drink thing, it's like, imagine having a bag of chips and only eating one chip. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot.
Well, at least if you eat chips, you don't flash your boobs at a policeman.
I should hope not, anyway.
No.
And I love you shared a message with me of wanting to change the ethos that people have, that mums deserve a drink. And, you say that mums deserve so much better than numbing out with alcohol, which is so true. So so many people are like, well, I deserve it. Even if you're not a mum, I deserve a drink. I've had a stressful week at work. I deserve a drink. And everyone does deserve so much more than numbing themselves out with alcohol. So what do you suggest that mums or other stressed adults do to treat themselves instead?
Well, I think it's just, first of all, you've got to get out of that habit. You've got to change your mindset and just go, right, that's not working for me anymore, and I want to do something different. So now there's a certain tea that I love. It sounds really cheesy, a sober person drinking loads of tea, but I look forward to that tea as much as I used to a glass of wine, and changing your mindset to more healthier options. Also, you've got to think about the messaging. It's not just a personal thing about you numbing the children out. It's about what message you're giving the children. So you're saying to them, you're annoying, you're too much, so therefore I have to drink a toxic substance to numb you away, to get rid of you. And that's the message they get. Mum drinks because I'm annoying. And in the end, that's what I realised, was that when you're not there and you're giving them this toxic messaging, they're not feeling your love. And that's what it comes down to. Me pouring wine down my neck while they're sitting watching telly, they're not getting my love. They're not getting the mum that they deserve. And that's a real realisation when I stopped drinking, was that, we've got to stop this toxic messaging, and we've got to create other habits, as you say, ones that our children can learn from in a positive way. We've got to be leading by example with our children. And we all know that. Like, we all know if we shout, they shout. Like, for example, I'm a shouter. It's a terrible thing. I hate myself for it. But I can't help it. Like, I probably need some therapy for it, to be honest. But what I've learned is that as long as you're happy, that's what my children see in sobriety. They don't need a perfect mum. I do shout too much. I sent my son to school with a block of cheese the other day instead of his packed lunch because I just got the wrong box out the fridge. I do stupid things, and I'm a shit parent sometimes, but I'm present and I'm available. And that's what changing your habits means. It's not just, I'm going to have a cup of tea instead of a glass of wine. It's actually creating a whole new lifestyle with really wholesome habits that are going to be an amazing influence on your kids.
So great. And I went through a phase of that. I love that you said that you swapped it for tea, because I did that too, where I found that every Friday I was coming home and cracking open a cider, and I was like, I deserve the cider, it's been such a long week. And it was only 1 or 2 ciders, which isn't, a big deal, but I just, I'm like, why do I need the cider? Like, you're rewarding yourself for a long week at work, and I did the same. All I did was swap that cider for a tea, and I was like, my brain got the same effect. It had the same reward. You get a treat because you've had a whole, you've survived a week of work. But
and also,
cider.
Yeah, exactly. And also, that moment where you've been looking forward to that wine all night and you've got the bottle and it all feels like you've got all the paraphernalia to do with it, like the glass, and you've got your seat outside and there's a sunset, all of these associations. When you take that first sip, it's like, but actually the alcohol doesn't hit your system for 20 minutes. So if you can create that association with something else, you still get that high, you still get that hit. I get that hit from a cup of tea. If I'm sitting watching a sunset in a hammock, I still think, oh good, wouldn't it be nice to have a beer? That doesn't go away. But I can easily sit with that moment, let it pass through my body and go, no, I know what's going to happen if I had a glass of wine. I don't have one, I have 10, and I end up passed out on the bathroom floor with vomit all over me. So I just think changing those associations and environments and swapping one thing out for another is just a really good start. And what you're saying about you questioning those ciders, it's interesting because that actually means you're a sober curious person, and that's a term that's flung about a bit more now, is that people are sober curious. If you're lying in bed questioning your alcohol intake on a Sunday morning like I was, it means you're questioning it, which means you're looking for something else. Whenever you're questioning something, and actually that term is great because it softens the blow a little. I identify as a sober curious woman. I don't identify as an alcoholic as much because I don't like the labelling and the imagery. You imagine me passed out with a baby crawling over me and something awful like that. Of course that never happened. It's much more subtle, this kind of area of drinking. They call it grey area drinking as well. And it's a much bigger market of people. I mean, we've all been there. So sober curiosity is a really interesting place because it doesn't make you feel like you have to have that alcohol label. It's just someone who's questioning their drinking. So if anyone feels like that's watching this, just Google sober curious because there's so much out there about that topic. It's really interesting.
I love that. That's a great title to give it. And how do you feel your mind is now, like the clarity and the focus that you have now compared to then? Because like I said, I've done up to 90 days sober, and it's amazing how clear the mind is. And I found that, after that, just having even one glass of wine a night, the next day, your mind just isn't as sharp. So how do you feel your mind is now that you're not drinking?
I just feel like I'm capable of anything now. Like before I was too hungover or I was so preoccupied with alcohol. I use that word a lot. My preoccupation, I swear it took out 80% of my brain. And since I've given up alcohol, I've started writing, I've started a blog, I've started a support group for women. And instead of people going, people compliment me now, which is a huge thing. I've never been complimented before. It was usually like, oh my God, you were wasted last night. Do you remember running down the road with your bra above your head or something like? And I'll just sit there in shame and guilt and be like, oh God, what did I do? What did I do? Like the fear of the forgotten. But now my brain is functioning and I'm capable, and I know when I go out, I'm not going to make a fool of myself. I know I'm in control of myself all the time. And I actually used to dread going out because I knew that I would make a fool out of myself. And now I enjoy going out and I look forward to it because I'm there, I'm available. I like myself now. There is such a thing called a sober hangover as well. So I realise I still often try to be extrovert in group situations because it's who I'm used to being. And so afterwards I do get a bit of shame and guilt about that, even though I'm not drinking, because I just feel like, oh God, what was I saying? Because I get nervous more, I guess. I'm actually more introvert than I thought. So I'm trying to be this life and soul of the party still. But sometimes, I get home and go, oh no, I can't believe I said that. But yeah, so that still happens. It doesn't all go away.
That's so great. And so did you replace your alcohol with anything else? Are there any other, obviously the writing and the blogging, but some people, did you replace the habit with the habit of something else, or did you manage to move past?
I know it's a bit. Yeah, well, you definitely do more exercise, which I know might not look by. I do a bit more boxing and stuff like that. I definitely look forward to chocolate more. coffee, but they're all things that probably aren't good for me, but I think, well, I've had enough vices throughout my life. Chocolate and coffee is probably not great, but hey, what am I going to do? I'm not perfect.
Yeah. No, that's great. I would take chocolate any day. That's a great thing to replace it with.
Yeah.
And so for those who are sober curious and thinking about giving up alcohol, but maybe they're worried about being judged at social events, what advice would you give them? Because often we take alcohol to make social events easier.
I think the most important thing is to realise that you are worthy of sobriety. That is a huge thing that I've learned. This sober journey isn't about giving up drinking. I think that's really important to say. It's not just like you give up drinking and then you live a life of boring, it's all boring. And this sober journey is much more than that, which took me a few months, more than 90 days to realise. It wasn't till I stopped drinking till more than a year that I actually started to like myself again. And that makes those sober situations much better because you're confident within yourself. You know, this is the confidence connection. You become confident when you stop drinking because you're aware of yourself, you're aware of your feelings. It can feel very raw going out because, you know, I remember at first going out, I felt like I could see people's hearts beating and all the lights seemed really, really bright on me. It felt like the attention was on me and every word that came out of my mouth I could hear and my jaw was tight. But on my podcast, our motto is feel the awkward, do it anyway, because being sober is about feeling awkward in the beginning. You are going to feel awkward in those sober situations, in the social world, but you have to step into it and carry on. It's, you know, practice makes perfect. Nothing is going to be easy the first time you do it, but you got to keep on doing it. And the best thing I do is have a few lines ready for those people that are going to try and twist your elbow. One of them involves the F word and off. And because really what you put in your body isn't really anybody else's business, is it? So really, as you said earlier, it's a reflection of their own behaviour, which is if you're sober, you can remember what they were doing. I remember when I was drunk, I didn't like sober people around me because I thought, well, if I'm going to misbehave, I don't want them telling me about it tomorrow. So actually, I pushed sober people away. I was one of those people. It's a terrible regret that I have, was being mean to sober people. I actually hated them because I couldn't understand, why would you want to be sober when you can be pissed? I couldn't understand it. It was just completely off another planet to me. But now I understand it. I think I've sent a few sorrowful emails to ex-mates saying, I'm so sorry I did that to you, because it's not right. And you have to learn to be yourself, which is really what I was saying about this sober journey. You have to learn to be yourself and be happy and confident within yourself to enjoy those moments. And be confident enough to say now, which I say and can scare people off, is actually alcohol made me mentally unwell. It caused me to have anxiety, and usually that shuts them up. You know, you could do a bit of a crazy face as you say it, that might help. But yeah, so if you're honest, I find being honest about your sobriety. We did a podcast recently about learning how to be social in this world. And one of the things we said was just to tell people before you go. Like if you're going out with a group of mates who are big drinkers, sit down with them for a coffee one morning and say, look, this is what I'm doing. So you don't have to get there and get these awful people saying, go on, have one. Surround yourself with people that are going to respect your journey and ones that aren't going to give you a hard time, because actually they're giving you a hard time for their own reasons, not because you're doing a bad thing. What you're doing is actually incredible and people are intrigued by it. And often now I get people like asking me like more than come on, let's have a drink, because they know I don't drink. It's more like, how on earth do you do this? I want to do it. And you end up being an inspiration for others because they secretly want to do it too, I think.
That's so true. And like you said, if you see other people who are sober, you push them away because that just makes you reflect on yourself. So that's so great that you're aware of that and push past it. So what's been your biggest win or success since you've been sober?
Well, I just think that I'm now a functional human being. I know that sounds like a minor thing to most people, but I don't think I was a functional human being for 25 years. I think I was just a little bit of a mess. I mean, I travelled. I just managed to wing it, I think. And now I'm busy, I'm organised, I've got stuff on, I'm involved with life, and I am really busy. I've got 3 little kids, and they are hard work, but I just think that's part of this is learning how to be yourself, as we go back to again, and learning to be authentic. So that's definitely who I am now, no matter whether people like me. Well, my drinking was always about people pleasing and about acceptance, as we said. But now I'm authentic. I am who I am. And if people don't like me, I really don't care, because I can't change me now. Whereas before, I understand why they didn't like that drunken mess, because I was a liability and probably ruined their nights because they had to hold my ponytail while I vomited tequila shots into the toilet. But now people don't have to do that. So, and if they don't like me, that's fine. I mean, I can't make everybody happy, and that's another lesson I used to try and make a room full of people happy that I didn't know. Each pub I entered, each nightclub, I thought it was my job and my responsibility to make the whole room happy. And now I realise that was a huge responsibility for me to take on. So I don't do that anymore. A lot of things have changed in that respect.
Yeah, that's a big lesson to learn. That is not other people's happiness and not your responsibility. So
No.
On the topic of confidence and confidence connection, what does confidence mean to you?
It means that I no longer abandon myself. So that's what really I was doing. I don't know if you've read Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. It's an amazing book. She talks a lot about abandoning herself. She's an ex-drinker as well. And I think that's what I was doing. I was abandoning who I was, and it took me a long time to realise that I mattered. And that's what's related to my confidence, is understanding that in the equation of me drinking, I'd got lost somewhere en route. 26 years of ingrained binge drinking, I had lost myself. The real me, this persona that I'd created, it wasn't who I am. That is not, and that's why I don't mind telling these stories, Bronte, to be honest, because that person is a complete insane version of who I am now. So yeah, abandoning myself was a terrible thing that I did a lot. And now my newfound confidence in sobriety means I don't do that anymore.
That's great. And on the topic of that book, do you have any favourite books or podcasts or people to follow that inspire you?
I've got so many. I mean, one thing I recommend to people who are just stepping out on this sober journey is to make yourself a sobriety Instagram account. It's been a huge help to me. So you just make a separate account from the one that you've got and just follow anyone with the word sober in it, because they post, it's like a hugely inspirational, never-ending stream of quotes and stories, and it's just an incredible thing to do. So I really recommend that to anybody. My first guest on my podcast in a week's time is someone called William Porter, he's wrote a book called Alcohol Explained. He's a brilliant person to follow because he tells you all about that science behind drinking, which is really fascinating. And actually it can take a bit of your guilt away, because you go, well, I'm supposed to do this, so I don't know how to stop because it's my body telling me to carry on. There's so many good books out there. There's The Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and one that I quit drinking the next day was The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. I mean, I did go to therapy for my drinking. I think it's important to say that. This grey area of drinking, people feel like they're not worthy of professional support. And I did feel like that because I didn't feel like my drinking was extreme. But what I realised was that I wanted to make myself better and I couldn't do it on my own. So I did get therapy, which is how I quit drinking. I had to get to the bottom of why I drank in the first place, which was this people pleasing and all of these things that happened, creating this void in my heart. We go back to all of that. So yeah, books and everything help, but there's a big, pie chart of sobriety, and it's going to be your quit lit, your podcast, your therapy, all of these things are going to make up this sobriety pie chart, which you will fill in over time, which will make this journey a lot easier. But yeah, so many books, and people I follow as well. There's like Sober Dave. He's going to come on the podcast. He's sort of a 55-year-old guy in England who's a massive boozer. and he's just really, really honest and lovable. He has a podcast as well called On the Road. I highly recommend that. Have you heard of Vanessa Haldane? She's over here. She does something called Journey to Worthy, which is just about women realising their worth. Yeah, she's amazing. She's worth following. There's my mate Danny at How I Quit Alcohol. She's married to the singer Ash Grunwald, and she gave up drinking, and she does a great podcast as well. So all of those tools are going to be great in your sobriety toolbox.
There's a lot there. So
lots, yeah.
If people want to follow you on your journey, or use your journey as an inspiration, where can people find you and connect with you?
So I'm at Drunk Mummy Sober Mummy on Instagram. My website is Drunk Mummy Sober Mummy. The name of my group on Facebook has actually changed. It is just Drunk Mummy Sober Mummy, the group. And of course my podcast. So my podcast is getting about 500 downloads a day at the moment. I do it with my mate Lucy. Lucy is the founder of Beanstalk Mums, which is a single mums network here in Australia, but all over the world. She runs the Vine as well. She gave up drinking 3 days after meeting me. Sometimes you just need to meet that person who you think, gosh, they're still normal. They're not boring, they're normal. And sometimes you need to find that one person to help you on your journey. And for Lucy, that was me. So we had an amazing connection. She's been sober nearly a year. So on the podcast, it's all about the things we've been talking about. It turned into a bit of a comedy podcast, because it's all our terrible tales of debauchery and how other people can learn by not putting themselves at risk and doing all these awful things that we've done. So it's actually just a really funny, light-hearted podcast about what it's like being, living as a sober woman in a world drenched in booze. But you'll love it. Yeah, it's called Sober Awkward. It's on iTunes and Spotify. It's becoming really popular, and we're being sponsored by some alcohol-free drinks companies and stuff. But it's a really good laugh. Even if you're not giving up drinking, I think you'll still get a giggle out of it.
Yeah, I'll definitely go check that out. That sounds like it'd be a good time. And what's the best advice you've been given, or any favourite quotes to live by?
So I'm from Reading in England, and obviously Ricky Gervais is from Reading. He's like my favourite person in the whole world from The Office. He wrote this brilliant quote, which I share a lot. I probably share it once every 6 months. It's this: it's better to create something that others criticise than to create nothing and criticise others. Ooh.
Boom. That is...
Boom! Yeah. Because putting yourself out there, like you, and I gather you're putting yourself out there a bit, it is confronting, and you do feel your self-worth. And sometimes I put things on Instagram, and those sober hangovers happen and anxiety, but I'm putting myself out there for a reason. It's because I want to tell my story to help others, and I have to stick to my purpose with that. And that's the reason I tell my story, is because I want to inspire others. Go, look, sober isn't boring. I'm still normal. I have an amazing life. I have 3 lovely children. I'm not perfect, but I'm here and I'm available, and I don't drink. I'm not preoccupied with alcohol anymore, and it's really absolutely liberating to not have to think about boozing anymore. It's like a whole big load of stress has been lifted off my chest, and I'm just free from it, and I can just be my authentic self. And that is a great message for anybody out there.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. That's a whole lot of powerful talk in there. I think anyone that listens is going to find a lot of great wisdom in there, whether they're quitting drinking or not, or even just thinking about reducing it a bit. There's so much in there. Even just learning how to believe in yourself, and that you are capable of achieving things without the mask of alcohol. So before we go, do you have any final words or advice you want to share with the listeners?
I think I would really say, even if you're not questioning your drinking now, give it a go. Give sobriety a go, just even for a month, and see the benefits you'll reap. I think it takes a couple of months or even a year to really start becoming the authentic you. That's the whole other journey. But I think you need to realise you're worthy of not pounding wine at every opportunity and falling over and being this person. You're worthy of more. You deserve better. You deserve a healthy, long life. Everybody does, and we matter, and it will build your confidence, and it will take away anxiety. So yeah, embrace the authentic you, because you deserve it.
That is so true. Well, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to share with everyone. I hope everyone, enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed being here. And everyone should go check out her podcast and give her a follow. But thank you so much, and I think that's about it. So thanks for tuning in, everyone.
There's my stump. It's funny, though. Look.
Bye.
Bye.